is a study of how we as human beings communicate, interact, and pass our knowledge from one to another. Before we proceed, let's try something out. To everyone in the audience, look to the person sitting on your left. Please, go ahead. It's very important. Look them in the eye. Now look to the ones sitting on your right. Let that movement simmer. The ones facing the wall, you could look at me. Now, did you notice how we kind of judge each other? In what was bad in a couple of seconds? Hopefully it was possible judgment, but yeah, that is how the human mind works. The very nature of such an interaction proves to us how we as human beings are fundamentally built on the power of communication. Now let us assume the timeline of mankind's creative expression as a cake. The spinning cake is ever growing, evolving, and expanding. We as human beings always figure out new ways to communicate, express, and perceive one another. That's why the cake is expanding. Now, let us cut this cake, study the slices, and look at what they hold. The first slice. It is May of 2019. Alex Beecham and his team of 6 are just days away from releasing their game Outer Wilds, which they have been working on for 7 years. What started off as his master's thesis has now grown into a game of space exploration and unlocking the mysteries of the universe. Sure, the art direction is amazing and the music is absolutely terrific, but the question still lingers. If what they had created, and ultimately the design philosophy that the game has been built upon, will truly work out. Now let's push the timeline backwards a little bit, a couple of years. It has been 10 years since the end of the First World War. German author Erich Remarque releases a novel titled All Quiet on the Western Front, which causes a stir all across the globe. Many consider it to be a pinnacle in depicting the extreme horrifying and traumatic nature of the Great War, while others consider it to be a treacherous anti-war propaganda. How horrible. Now let's push the timeline backwards, way backwards. Our third slice, circa 1200 BC. Ordered by the king of Sparta, Odysseus is commanded to leave his home. Hesitation grows from within as he realizes that his journey into the Trojan War might bar him from growing old together with his wife and child. Uncertainty kills from within, but he knows that this was an obligation that he had sworn to. As fundamentally different these 3 slices may be, Homer's Odyssey being passed on orally, All Quiet on the Western Front being a novel, and The Outer Wilds being a game, there's one common feature that unites all 3 of them. All of them utilized fictional storytelling as a vehicle to deliver information grounded in reality. Now, for a substantial amount of human history, mankind was dependent on books as a primary medium of expression and knowledge. But as time passed and we saw the potential of using technology to evolve from our contemporary methods, we migrated towards digital media. And in the digital age, we have witnessed a massive change in dynamics in both creative expression as well as education. And with this change, it is important that we update our methodologies as well. What I imply by this is that by diversifying our tools of science and communication, we can become the catalyst in effectively passing on information. And it is this feature that makes storytelling a very important, which gives storytelling a big future in education. Now let's structure the whole discussion into the Trinity, an upside down triangle which funnels down towards our ultimate goal of effective education. At the top, we have storytelling and the human mind. And it is this interaction between storytelling and the human mind that ultimately lead to our final goal of effective education. Now, so our first question, why is storytelling such a powerful tool? Storytelling in education is not a brand new concept. Our generation of Indians, we were raised on moral stories and Panchatantra stories, which utilize this form of narrative storytelling to convey a message. The same applies to other contemporary forms of media as well, such as films, music, books, etc. However, when it comes to video game, there exists a massive difference that makes it truly unique from other forms of narrative art. It is the concept of player's agency. And it is this extra dimension of expression that enables us to discover the potential of storytelling in video games. And it is this dimension of expression that no other media can reproduce. So, think about this. You're watching a film. The way that a narrative structure works in this case is, the writer has already plotted out the scene to its very last detail. The detachment for you as the viewer from the choices and consequences of the world created makes you, as a viewer, a mere spectator. The thought process is very linear. You're given the information and even told what to believe of this information. However, in the case of video games, there's a huge difference, the concept of player's agency, where you, as the player, is the decision maker and the architect of your own consequences. And it is this that makes video games truly unique. Now going back to our Trinity, storytelling, we have the power of player's agency. Now when it comes to the human mind, there is this concept and methodology in education called experiential learning that truly embraces the human mind's comfort in learning through experience and really cherishes the human mind's natural curiosity. First proposed during the 1800s, experiential learning has become a very important component in modern day education. Aptly titled, the Association for Experiential Education defines experiential learning as follows. They say that it is a philosophy and methodology in which educators purposefully focus on constructed experiences and focused reflection in order for the students to increase their knowledge, develop skills, and clarify values. Or in other words, it's learning by doing, where the focus is on the process of learning and not on the product of learning. By engaging the students intellectually, emotionally, we are able to create the entire learning process very engaging and exciting, which are two main components that modern day education desperately needs. In this form of education, that success is not guaranteed, by the way, since educators believe that risk-taking, failure, and uncertainty, and the whole concept of adventure are very crucial components to the process of learning. Now coming back to our Trinity, we have storytelling, which uses player's agency, the human mind that uses experiential learning, and which will ultimately lead us to education. Now don't get me wrong, but how many of us truly remember the multitude of videos that our professors sent to us when we underwent a global pandemic? This doesn't make us poor students with mediocre memories or our professors bad at their job. It is just that it fundamentally goes against what our human brains are naturally good at. It is the pathway of experience, focused reflection, recollection, and finally active experimentation. And it is this concept that the game Outer Wilds is built upon. It is a complete design philosophy of this game. Now the way the game Outer Wilds works is a very peculiar one. In a course of over a 22-minute time loop, you are given the full authority to discover and explore the solar system that evolves in very curious ways over a 22-minute time loop. The sole currency that enables you to proceed through the narrative of this game is information. Before the end of every time loop, you have to collect as much as information possible and piece the puzzle pieces together to finally understand the entire game. Now, this game, the psychologist David Cole explained the process of experiential learning in 4 primary steps. That is, concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and finally, active experimentation. Now let us see how these components come into play in this particular sequence from the game, The Outer Wilds. Alright, so for context, you come across this museum in the opening hour of the game. And once you notice that there's a separate section that leads away from the atrium of the museum, you come across a very peculiar rock. Now this rock glows in an ancient purple hue, and it evokes your curiosity. You observe the rock, it exists in this place, you look away, observe everywhere else, you observe again and it's gone. It has suddenly teleported to a different location. Now, the game explains this rock to be a quantum rock, a macroscopic object that exhibits quantum characteristics. But in reality, in our present world, is such a phenomenon possible? A macroscopic object exhibiting quantum characteristics? Absolutely not. This is a fictional storytelling aspect of the situation. In 1920, the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics was first proposed by Niels Bohr. This view states that quantum particles do not exist in one particular state or another. Instead, they exist in all of their states at once. However, when an active observer observes a quantum particle, it collapses into one of its existences. And this was the explanation given to the quirkiness of quantum mechanics. And that is exactly what's happening over here. The rock exists, you look away, it goes back to its multiple existences, and finally goes to another location. This is the educational aspect of the same situation. Now, how do we convey this message to the audience? What's beautiful is the game design drives the four stages of experiential learning here. Let me explain. So the first step, concrete experience. You come across this museum out of your own curiosity. Your agency and curiosity is given a front seat since there are no flashy hints and instructions telling you what to do. You come across a rock organically and naturally, and in case you falter, the board tells you, it evokes your curiosity even further, and you inevitably experience the spooky rock doing its spooky things. That forms the concrete experience. Now, reflective observation. You reflect upon what you had just witnessed. And finally, when you connect the dots and you realize that your observation and the state the rock finds itself in are connected, the reward of this connection in your synapses is excitement and engagement. Point number 2, reflective observation. Now, say you progress through the game and you come across a situation where this information on quantum rocks is relevant. You recollect the relevant details. And when you do so, we try to understand the implications of this. This keeps it even more engaging and you keep going. And finally, active experimentation. This is what our monkey brains absolutely love doing. Trying again and again and again. You try to succeed, you fail, but you try again and again. But here, what's there to lose? It's a video game. And once you finally achieve what the game wanted you to do, we have just witnessed something beautiful. You have just been fed information in the most authentic way possible. My friends, the game managed to express the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics through a video game with the power of narrative storytelling. That is the Trinity. Now, what does the future hold?